Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. I have to play a video for you for a lot of you out there who don't know about DARPA, especially a lot of you young teenagers out there that may have stumbled upon my channel. DARPA is a government agency. They're the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and they're supposedly responsible for research and development for defense and emerging technologies for use by the military. Of course, if you're not familiar with what's going on in the world, they tell you that DARPA, they tell you that your military is there to protect you from other countries, but really what they're there for is to advance technology against their own civilians. And DARPA's projects that they reveal clearly show that this is not the type of thing that they would ever use in war. This is not something that they would use against an enemy. Well, maybe an enemy, because an enemy to them is us. This is the direct neural interface that I've talked about. And listen to this soulless guy. And please make sure you listen to this in its entirety. It's very, very, very important for people to understand what the government's trying to do, how their goal is to, quote unquote, learn to control complex systems. So here's this man you're about to hear. Listen to him closely talking about the human brain and talking about how this is something that they want to implement, direct neural interface. And they're talking about doing this to you without your consent. Of course, they'll use a lot of the triggers that I've talked about in the past: anxiety, depression, moods. They'll be able to make sure that you're not depressed anymore or have anxiety anymore. Meanwhile, they're the ones who are responsible for causing all the diseases that people have in this world. They're the ones responsible for the high levels of depression and anxiety. It's because of a lot of different things, but they like to tell you it's because the world's just becoming a difficult place for teenagers because of bullies and things like that. What it really is because of the frequencies that they're using openly on all of us, using 5G towers. We know that they give us chemical baths every single day from the sky. All one has to do is look up at those white streaks that don't dissolve all day, that sit there, that linger. And then imagine, what would that be like if that was a chemical like aluminum or barium and it was falling right down onto my skin and I was breathing it in? So DARPA is obviously committing crimes against humanity. These people are criminals. And of course, they tell you that they're the Department of Defense. They're the Department of, allocating research projects for the government. And then nobody says, well, who are they going to use this on? They're going to go to war with somebody and they're going to do what? They're going to put a direct neural interface into their skulls? Or is this something that they're trying to master and move into normal society, onto regular civilians, to tell them that this type of stuff is beneficial? But really what this is a mass mind control experiment, which is one of the reasons that they constantly try to use the term mind control and dismiss it and discredit people who talk about mind control. But obviously right now we're dealing with the majority of our society under mass mind control, under mass hypnotism. So keep in mind when he talks about learning to control complex systems, because what he's talking about is you. You're the complex system that the government wants to control. This is our frightening reality. And remember, they are so far ahead with this type of technology. This video is from 7 years ago. They are so far advanced. The things they let us know about, they've already mastered. Now they are implementing on society. Stuff like this is already out in the open. A lot of people believe that this has already been implanted in many of the civilians around us. But this is 1984. And what this leads to is the thought police. Because God forbid you have a wrong thought. And that wrong thought, of course, to the government wouldn't be some disgusting act with a child or something like that we would all look at as a wrong, disgusting thought. The wrong thought, of course, would be that you're starting to question the government. You're starting to think that what they're doing is sinister. Well, that would be the wrong thought. And that's why they want inside your mind, so that they could control your thoughts and see your thoughts. And if your thoughts don't line up with being a happy, enslaved human, well, you'll be taken care of. But this is an interview with a man by the name of Dr. Justin Sanchez. It's just absolutely sinister. But of course, they talk about this stuff like it's great for humanity, great for society, great for people who have brain disabilities. And they don't say, well, why do these people have Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all these other things in the first place? Oh, right, because you gave it to them in the first place. And now, of course, you're coming in telling us a solution that we should all be thankful for is something that you've created when you're the one who's caused the problem in the first place. Here it is.
So I promise you, nothing that I show you today is going to be an illusion. So with that, again, my name is Justin Sanchez, and I'm a neurotechnologist by training. And like was just said, I was at my lab at the University of Miami, and I got a call out of the blue. At the other end of the phone, there's a person that says, we need you to come immediately to Washington, D.C. and come to DARPA. And that's really where the whole story begins. So what is DARPA? DARPA is the high-tech research branch of the Pentagon. And I'm currently the office director in the Biological Technologies Office. And like many of my other colleagues that are at DARPA, my journey to the agency was an opportunity to expand the impact of the work that I was doing in neurotechnology, find new avenues that it could be applied. And I was thinking very deeply about this problem. I was thinking very deeply about the brain. I've always been interested in the brain, but not just from the medical sense. I always wanted to use engineering, apply it to the brain to deepen our understanding of the brain, and then try to find new applications of what we could do with the brain. So whether it's the work that I did in the past or the work that I'm currently doing at DARPA, the goal has always been the same: develop new technologies that enable humans to use their brains to change the way that they interact with others and interact with the world. And while I'm at DARPA, we're thinking very deeply about national security, but what I'm going to show you today is that a lot of the technologies that we're developing go well beyond national security and actually are going to challenge us as humans. So DARPA got its beginnings in 1958. This is when we started pushing the envelope of things, and that's when in our country we learned about Sputnik, right? The Soviet Union had Sputnik, and the leaders in our country were totally caught off guard by this. And they said we could never be caught off guard ever again. So the agency was formed with a singular mission: breakthrough technologies. And the agency takes risks where others, like in industry or other parts of government, are unwilling to take risks. Okay? So we set off on our mission, and we were trying to make these breakthrough technologies. Now, along the way, we said, okay, if we understand very deeply the science and technology associated with these kinds of breakthroughs, we not only can predict the surprises that may be anywhere in the world, but we can also create a few surprises of our own. Now, while we've been doing this over a vast number of years, one of the things that did emerge from all of our work is it's not the technology alone that makes all the difference. It's how the people of the world use the technology that we develop. Okay? That's the fundamental game changer in all of this. And a terrific example of all of that is the smartphone. So all of you probably have one or maybe even two smartphones in your pocket, and you may not know that a lot of the technology that's in the smartphone has its roots in DARPA. So Herb mentioned the internet, GPS, which enables us to find our phones or locate where those phones are. The touch screen that's on your phone that enables you to interact with it, that was a DARPA development. The accelerometer that's in the phone that enables you to change the orientation of the screen as you rotate the phone. Siri, also a DARPA technology development. And all of those aspects, again, while they had their roots in national security, came together in this small device, and it changes the way that we perceive our world and the way that we interact with our world. Okay? Now, what I'm going to show you today is not the smartphone. I'm going to show you a new way that we're developing technology to interact with the world for the future. And that's really the technology of the brain. Now, the brain is an amazing organ. When it functions, there are millions and millions of neurons that become active, and they send signals not only to their neighbors, but also to very different parts of the brain. So to a person like me, the brain is not a black box. The brain's not just this goop in between your ears. It's a very intricate and elegant signaling of all of these neurons and how they evolve over time. And what we've done at DARPA is develop the technology in order to sense these signals in real time or even write signals into the brain. And today I'm going to show you a few examples of what that technology is and how it actually came to be. Now, what's really important in all of this is that at DARPA, when we think about the brain, we think about the people we serve. So make no mistake about it, we're a part of the Department of Defense and we serve military personnel. Now, the part that really struck me so much when I came to DARPA was how hard a job these military personnel have to protect our freedoms, protect our families, and protect our way of life. So again, when we think about the brain, we think about their job. to control complex systems or learn complex tasks. They're under unbelievable stress. And then ultimately, a lot of these people make the ultimate sacrifice and actually get injured. And some of our most early programs at DARPA have been to develop neurotechnology to restore those people back to their more whole self or their more natural self. Okay, so think of direct interfaces to the brain to enable somebody to move again after they've been paralyzed in service of the country. Okay, now what we've learned along the way in all of that is that those discoveries, right, those technologies are opening the door to a whole new set of possibilities for the future. Okay, so how do we do all of this? So this may be your first time hearing about a direct neural interface, and in the middle of the screen up there is actually an example of one of the types of neural interfaces that we're using in humans today. So this is a sensor array. It's about 4 by 4 millimeters. And on this sensor array, there are 96 sensors. Each one of the tips on that little array can detect between 1 and 3 neurons in your brain. All right? And we have the technology in order to identify those neurons, amplify their activity. There's minuscule signals actually happening in your brain. We can send those signals into a computer, and that computer can interpret what all of those signals actually mean when you're thinking about trying to do something. And we can place these sensors anywhere in your brain or even in your peripheral nervous system, right? These are the nerves that are outside of your brain, okay? So while you may have thought of neurotechnology, as I've just described to you, as being something way off in the future, it's actually a technology that exists today, and we're actually using it with humans. Now, how did we get here? Okay, so again, I'm telling you about something that you may not be familiar with, but we actually have a history of working in neurotechnology. And it turns out that in the early 2000s, neuroscientists like myself didn't even know if it was possible to read out, let's say, 100 neurons of activity in real time from an awake-behaving individual. So we started in animal subjects. We said, okay, let's try these sensors out. Can we read out the signals in real time? And can we do something simple like control a robotic arm? And we showed that we could actually do that, just having the animal think about it. And once we proved out that technology in 2005, we said, okay, we're ready to go to humans. Can we place the same technology in the human brain and restore the ability to move and even sense after you've been injured? And I'm going to show you a couple examples of this. Yes, we could do that. And we said, okay, again, this is DARPA. We try to push the limits of what's possible. We said, okay, if we can do that for movement and sensation, can we try to do something even more complex? So we went to memory in the human and said, okay, for humans with traumatic brain injury, could we restore their ability to form and recall memories? Again, direct brain interface. Now, here's one thing that may blow your mind. The kind of questions that we have to go after here are answering things like, what is a memory in your brain? Right? Have you ever thought about what a memory is, what those intricate neural firing patterns actually are, and how you need to interact with them in order to facilitate memory formation and recall? That's the scale of the problem that we're actually working on at DARPA. Again, being DARPA, we don't just stop there. We keep moving forward in our trajectory. Actually started a new program in 2013 called SubNets, thinking about the sub-networks of the brain, but for the most challenging problem of neuropsychiatry, and that's mental states. Right? Think about depression and anxiety. Think about trying to develop a direct neural interface to help people with their depression and anxiety. And again, the same questions are there. What actually is depression in the brain? What are the neurons that are involved in anxiety? Those are the kinds of things that we're ultimately going after. Okay, so we have a very long trajectory here, right? Over a decade of work in this space. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to show you some examples of the achievements that we are able to do today, and then paint a picture for you for what the future of neurotechnology may ultimately hold for us. Okay? So the first person I want to introduce you to is Nathan. He's the one on the right side of the screen. And Nathan is living with paralysis. He was paralyzed in 2004 in an automobile accident. And Nathan was actually a freshman in college. He was studying nanotechnology. When he heard about some of our studies, he said, I want to be a pioneer in that. So he signed up to do one of our studies. And Nathan had that same array, right, that 4 by 4 millimeter array, placed in his motor cortex, right, the part that is involved in movement. He had another set of arrays placed in his sensory cortex, okay? And you can actually see on the upper right side of the screen there's a little plug that's coming out of his head. That's where those arrays are connected to. And the wires send the signals from his brain actually to that bank of a rack of computers in the middle of the screen, process all of his neural activity in real time, and actually send that activity to that robotic arm. We also developed the robotic arm, and he met President Obama, was able to think about moving the robotic arm, and shook the president's hand. Okay. Now, the other part of this story is that robotic arm also had sensors in the fingertips. So when the president placed his hand on the robotic hand, The force transducers took that information and did the reverse, went back through the computers, went back through the wire, back into Nathan's head, and he could actually feel the president's hand on the robotic hand. It was truly a remarkable moment. Okay, so that's what Nathan can do. Let me show you a video of something else that Nathan can do. All right? So this is Nathan taking these cones and he's kind of building this structure. And he's doing all of this just by thinking about it. You can see he's not moving his own arms. He's just producing the neural signals directly from his brain and stacking those cones. Right? So think of this, right? You're a paralyzed person being able to interact with the world in this way. It can really be transformative for you, right? You have a new way to project yourself onto the world. All right, so Nathan, he was astounded by this moment. It's life-changing for him. But we asked him, Nathan, what else do you want to do? And he's a gamer. And he said, I want to fly an aircraft. So we said, okay, we can help you to fly an aircraft. So the next thing we did is we connected him to a F-35 Joint Strike Fighter and put him out over Las Vegas. And we basically remapped his neural activity onto any control surface that we ultimately wanted to on that Joint Strike Fighter. Again, put yourself in the place of Nathan. Think about how you're locked in this wheelchair, and then think about your ability to actually control this aircraft, change your perspective of the world, and see it in a very different way. And I think that he sees Las Vegas in a very different way now that he's able to fly over. And Nathan started having a lot of fun with this, and at the very end of this run, he's like, I'm just going to do a barrel roll here, and did a barrel roll on the aircraft. And it just kind of shows you the creativity that a person like Nathan with a direct neural interface, what they can ultimately do. So that's what we can do today. What does the future look like with these kinds of technologies? Okay, so think about building with your brain. Think about changing your perspective of the world by flying over a city with the brain. So in this vignette, this person is an architect, is paralyzed, lost control of his arms. He needs a new way to communicate his ideas. So through his direct neural interface, he can connect to his drafting software, position buildings anywhere he likes, the details of the building. Maybe he can even connect to a collaborator out in the field to get a different perspective on the building. Okay? And imagine, in the future, building a skyscraper just with your brain, just with the perspective of your brain. It could be transformative. All right, so that's Nathan. The next example I'd like to show you is a person, his name is Doug. Okay, and Doug was injured 25 years ago in a near-fatal electrical accident. And Doug's very different than Nathan in the sense that he has no hands on both of his arms. He lost both of his hands. Imagine living your life that way. But for Doug, we also explored the possibility of a direct neural interface for him. So in this particular case, it took that same sensor array, but instead of placing it in the brain, we placed it into the nerves of his forearm. You can actually see on the right side of the screen there his residual limb, and that's where that sensor array is. Now, what's different in this picture is that we connected his peripheral nervous system to that 3D virtual environment that's in the center of the screen. And there's a virtual hand there, and it's going to be touching a virtual door. And whenever the virtual hand touches the virtual door, signals are sent back into that electrode array, into his nerves, and this is what Doug can actually do with that interface.
Oh my God, I just opened the door. Oh yeah.
Can you feel the finger sliding when you do that?
Yeah, actually I can. Get it on there. That is so cool.
And it is cool, right? You can imagine working in that 3D world just through your nervous system. It really is amazing. So when we see something like this, we say, can we change the future? Can we change the way that we even play, right? So imagine in the future you had a direct neural interface, and that direct neural interface gets you off your couch in a virtual way, enables you to explore virtual worlds just through your direct neural interface. And we've got game controllers and cameras to do this now, but it's nowhere near the kinds of things that I'm talking about here. Again, exploring your cognitive space in this virtual world could be transformative. What if you could even connect to your friends all across the globe through your direct neural interface and kind of explore what that would actually be? Okay, so what we're doing today with Doug is just the beginning of what we think is possible in the future. Okay, so the last example that I like to give for you today is in something much more difficult. It's in that area of memory. Okay, remember, memory is a very tough concept. In this particular case, there's a person that has volunteered for our studies. This person is living with intractable epilepsy, has seizures that are uncontrollable. And part of their therapy is that they come to the clinic and they have sensors placed in and on their brain in order to try to map out where this problem is occurring. And it turns out that some of the places where those sensors are located are in the memory structures of the brain. And we ran a test where we asked the question, could we develop a direct neural interface, stimulate the brain, in order to facilitate memory formation and recall? And this is for declarative memories, memories about facts. So this is how it goes. In this particular example, the person has to recall 12 words. We know how hard it is to do something as mundane as that, right? Think of phone numbers and things like that. In this case, we do it with brain stimulation and without brain stimulation. We're going to sense his cognitive state, and when we detect that memory is low, we stimulate the brain in order to facilitate its ability to do it. So the first example is without stimulation, and let's see how good he actually does. 12 words, no stimulation. So we got through 3 of them, and we've all experienced this. You know, he does the old face palm, can't get through the rest of them, right? So now we're going to do it with direct brain stimulation.
Soup, snail, sea, cloud, juice, moth, plane, thread, dark, wood, stone.
No kidding.
Got all of them.
A good picture in my head.
And that was the breakthrough moment for us. He said, I had a good picture in my head I could just see. It was the moment we knew that we were having an effect on his memory circuit, okay? So transformative moment for all of us that were involved. So what does the future look like? Well, imagine as you're getting older and you have a more powerful form of this kind of neural interface and you're feeling maybe a little nostalgic and you want to record some of your memories. Maybe there's a possibility of using a direct neural interface to actually do that. And maybe you use that neural interface to record the moment you went on a first date, maybe the first time you proposed, or even the birth of your child. And then if you even had the ability to share those sets of memories with your friends and family, it could be transformative for how we ultimately live our lives. So, recall back to the examples I gave you with GPS and the internet and Siri. Those all came out of Department of Defense kinds of technologies, but they ultimately came together in a way that changed society. And we think that in the future that neurotechnologies like the ones I just showed you are going to be picked up by commercial entities, right? They're going to use neurotechnologies in the future. And you know, at DARPA, we create these breakthrough technologies in order to change the future and change the world. That's what we do. That's our mission. Whether it's for a person to try to command and control a complex system, or it's a person that has extraordinary injuries and we brought them back to a more normal quality of life. We know that these technologies are extremely powerful, and we also know that they can be used for good or for ill. And without a doubt, these kinds of technologies are going to introduce new societal questions that we're all going to have to address. And you know, just a few to consider. Will neural enhancement be considered a personal choice like laser eye surgery or even braces? Will there be a huge disconnect between the neural enhanced haves and the have-nots? In the future, will neural enhancement or some form of neural enhancements be considered a right, instead of a personal choice? These are just some of the questions that we have to think about, and they're not just questions for the technologists here, they're questions for all of us. So how the future of this very powerful technology unfolds really depends upon all of you. And as we shape that future, and we really make choices associated with that future, it's the choices that we make that will define us as individuals, and it will really reveal who we are as a society. So, as I've shared with you today, the brain is an extraordinary organ. It has the potential to completely change the way that we interact with technology. So whether it's building with your mind, thinking of a new perspective of the world with your mind, changing the way that you play and interact with your friends, or even finding new ways of recording and sharing your memories. These are all the possibilities of the future. And it's DARPA's push into these very difficult areas which is making all of this possible. And that really sets up the last question for the discussion today is, what will you accomplish with your brain in the future? Thank you so much.